We're used to Black Friday looking like this.
There was a time when walking into a grocery store meant certainty, shelves lined with choices, freezers humming with abundance, a quiet promise that whatever we needed would be there. But now, in more and more corners of America, that promise is breaking. It starts small. One item missing, then two, and then a whole aisle stripped bare.
I have a breakfast brunch coming up with a group of people.
A mother searching for baby formula. An elderly man hoping to find his medication. Empty carts, frustrated glances, clerks with nothing left to say. This isn't just about inconvenience anymore. It's about fear, a quiet fear, the kind that creeps in when the systems we rely on simply stop showing up. In this video, we're traveling through 10 U.S. states where this quiet crisis is becoming impossible to ignore, where empty shelves are reshaping daily life, where small towns and big cities alike are facing the slow unraveling of something we all once took for granted. This is more than a story about supply chains. It's about dignity, security, and the quiet erosion of normal. So, which places are most affected? Let's explore together. New York. If California is the fruit basket of America, then New York has always been its crown jewel. A place where ambition meets opportunity, where the skyline glows with the promise that anything is possible. From the packed bodegas of the Bronx to the gourmet aisles of Manhattan, the city has always overflowed with choices, with abundance. But now, that abundance is vanishing. According to the New York State Comptroller, nearly 14% of independent grocery stores in New York City have shut their doors in the past year, the sharpest decline since the 2008 financial crisis. In Brooklyn, in Queens, in the quiet corners of Staten Island, neighborhood staples are disappearing, not because they lost customers, but because they couldn't survive the rising rent, soaring energy bills, and broken supply chains. In some places, it's come to rationing: 2 cartons of milk, 2 loaves of bread per customer. Lines stretch out of corner markets for essentials that once filled shelves without thought. And it's not just scarcity, it's expensive. The Department of Commerce reports an 11% average increase in basic grocery prices across the city. Eggs and milk up 18%. For anyone on a fixed income, a minimum wage, or living off monthly benefits, that's the difference between eating well and skipping meals. One 73-year-old man from Queens put it plainly: "I've seen tough times in this country, but never have I seen America this tight." You walk into a store with your pension, and suddenly a shopping basket feels like a luxury. That voice, quiet, frustrated, honest, speaks for millions. Americans who did everything right, who worked hard, paid their dues, and believed that a stable life would follow. Now they're wondering what happened to that promise. Yes, politicians made big pledges: lower costs, economic stability, relief for working families. But in New York today, the only thing going down is faith. In leadership, in systems, and in the dream that used to feel just a little closer here. New York isn't sleepless because of its lights anymore. It's sleepless because of the worry. Because what happens when the most iconic symbol of American prosperity starts living like it's just getting by? And maybe the harder question is this: if New York is struggling this much, who's next? California once called the fruit basket of America, not just for its rich farmland, but for the promise it held. A place where stepping into a supermarket felt like entering a miniature Eden, the scent of ripe produce in the air, aisles bursting with color, choice, and abundance. But California feels farther away than ever. Today, even the giants, Walmart, Safeway, Vons, Ralph's, aren't immune. Empty shelves. Closed doors. Supply delays. What used to feel reliable is now fragile. Just a few years ago, grocery shopping was ordinary, even joyful. Fresh eggs, crisp lettuce, full bins of potatoes. Now, it sits a scavenger hunt across 3 maybe 4 stores. And when you finally find what you need, the price makes you pause. According to the U.S. Department of Agriculture, food prices in California rose 13% in 2024 alone, but income, for many, it's stuck in neutral. One resident captured the truth. If your pay doesn't rise with the cost of living, you're not just standing still, you're falling behind. And those who feel it the most, the ones who built this state, retirees on fixed pensions, working class families who clock in every day and still struggle to fill a fridge. A mother of 2 shared quietly, "I never imagined that one day buying a carton of eggs would mean choosing between dinner and the electricity bill." That's not a rare story anymore. It sets the new California reality, and it cuts deep, because this isn't set about laziness. People are working harder than ever. But when policy fails, when economic pressure piles up and supply chains crumble, even the hardest workers can't outrun it. California used to be where dreams began. But now, people are waking up to something else. An unspoken question echoing through the long checkout lines and half-stocked shelves. To the promise? The promise that if you worked hard, this state would take care of you, that your community would thrive. That prosperity wasn't set just for the few, but for all. Instead, we were left with rising prices, shrinking choices, and a growing silence from those in charge. So we ask, if the shelves are still empty today, what else might be missing tomorrow? And more importantly, is anyone in power truly listening to the mothers, the seniors, the cashiers, the truck drivers, the everyday people keeping California alive? Because behind every missing item is someone just trying to hold their life together. Texas, once a place where the horizon felt limitless, where the American dream rode high on the wide open skies of the Lone Star State. Families came here with hope in their hearts and grit in their hands, believing in the promise. In Texas, everything is bigger, better, possible. But somewhere along the way, that promise has started to unravel. The shelves are thinning, the prices climbing higher by the week. And the people, many of them born and bred Texans, others who came here seeking something better, are beginning to ask themselves, is this still the land of opportunity, or is that just a fading memory? In the past 2 years alone, over 800 small and medium grocery stores have shuttered across the state, most of them in rural regions like West Texas or the Rio Grande Valley. According to the Texas Department of Agriculture, 2.3 million Texans now live in food deserts, areas where fresh food is more than 10 miles away. 10 miles might not sound like much, but if you're elderly, disabled, or driving a car that barely holds together, 10 miles might as well be forever. And for some, that distance stands between hunger and a decent meal. In towns that once thrived off the land, the irony is painful. One farmer near San Antonio put it plainly, "We've spent our lives growing food, but when disaster hits, the help never comes fast enough, not enough to save our crops, or even put dinner on the table." You hear those words, and a quiet anger rises, not just at the storms or the heat waves, but at the slow-moving wheels of government, the red tape, the officials who talk of resilience without ever stepping foot in a struggling town. It wasn't always like this. Texas used to overflow with farmers markets, weekend barbecues, and homemade abundance. Now, dinner has become a question mark, a waiting game. Will the store have enough today? Can we afford it if it does? And when food becomes a gamble, so does everything else. Health, dignity, the ability to simply live without worry. Texas has always been proud, not because of its skyscrapers, but because of its strength in its people, its land, its spirit. But strength, real strength, is tested in moments like this, in how a community takes care of its own, in whether the promise of a better life holds up, not just for the wealthy, but for the everyday Texans who built this state from the ground up. So here sits the question no one wants to ask. If even Texas is struggling, what hope does the rest of America have? Because when the farms go quiet, when the stores go dark, when the promises ring hollow, the American dream doesn't disappear all at once. It fades. One town, one family, one empty shelf at a time. Nevada, the land where dazzling dreams once lit up the desert sky, where the neon glow of Las Vegas drew millions to a world of endless excitement, luxury, and possibility. But step just a few blocks away from the shimmering strip, and you enter a very different reality. Beneath the glitter, the shadow grows. According to the 3 Square Food Bank in Las Vegas, the number of people seeking food assistance has surged by over 35% since 2023. Meanwhile, the flow of goods into southern Nevada has slowed dramatically, down more than 21% in the first half of 2024 alone. Why? Rising transportation costs, port congestion in California, supply chain snarls that stretch longer than the desert horizon. In the suburbs, North Las Vegas, Summerlin, Henderson, shelves are growing emptier by the day. Frozen foods vanish first. Fresh fruits and vegetables become luxuries. Bottled water, a lifeline in this arid land, is now scarce and precious. Families once used to variety and choice now scramble for whatever sits left, often settling for canned goods and processed food that are far from the vibrant meals they once enjoyed. How can a place that generates billions in revenue from tourism, gambling, and entertainment let those who built it struggle for their next meal? Nevada City's neon lights may still blaze into the night, but they no longer guarantee a full stomach or a sense of security. This is the bitter truth of a city that never sleeps. Not all lights shine equally. Not every crowded street is a place where people can truly live. And sometimes the brightest illusions cast the longest shadows. Washington, a land where the skies weep gentle rains and the air carries the hum of innovation. Once a beacon of prosperity that drew dreamers and doers alike, Seattle's skyline, Tacoma's bustling docks, Spokane's steady growth. These cities promised opportunity, stability, and a future built on both nature's bounty. But beneath the glossy surface of this Pacific Northwest jewel, a quiet crisis is unfolding, a growing unease that is quietly unraveling the lives of thousands of families. According to the Washington State Department of Transportation, activity at the state's 2 largest ports, Seattle and Tacoma, has plummeted by over 25% in 2024. The culprit? Skyrocketing logistics costs and a severe shortage of shipping containers, disrupting the flow of goods essential to daily life. What does this disruption mean on the ground? Suburban supermarkets in places like Kent, Everett, and Tacoma are facing empty shelves where fresh produce once overflowed. The fruits and vegetables that define the state set's culinary identity are vanishing. Are suddenly scarce or gone. At the same time, the cost of living in the Seattle metropolitan area has surged by 9 to 12% within a single year, a steep climb that sips squeezing not only low-income families but also the middle class. Those who once counted on steady paychecks and affordable housing now find their budgets stretched to breaking point. It sets almost unimaginable that Washington, celebrated just a few years ago as one of America's 6 most livable states, now hosts early morning lines of families waiting desperately for enough fresh food to last a week. Many small grocery stores have resorted to rationing staples, limiting purchases to keep food available for more people. This is Washington's new reality, a paradox of prosperity shadowed by scarcity. The state that once symbolized balance, where towering tech campuses rise alongside lush evergreen forests, is now a landscape where not every promise reaches every kitchen table. Empty shelves are more than an inconvenience. They chip away at something deeper, the very sense of security that tomorrow will bring improvement, that hard work will pay off, that families can breathe a little easier. When the comforting abundance of food fades into uncertainty, it's not just meals that disappear. It sets hope. In this evolving story of Washington, the question lingers, can a place that has thrived on progress find a way to nourish all its people, not just in body, but in spirit? Because prosperity means little if it leaves so many behind. Florida, once a sun-drenched sanctuary, where retirees dreamed of golden years filled with ease, laughter, and abundant sunshine. The state that welcomed millions with open arms, a place where the ocean breeze whispered promises of peace and prosperity after decades of hard work. But now that idyllic paradise is showing cracks, slowly slipping towards something more uncertain, more fragile. Data from the U.S. Department of Agriculture reveals a stark truth. Over the past 3 years, Florida has lost more than 1,500 grocery stores. Large, trusted chains like Winn-Dixie, Albertsons, and cherished family-owned markets are closing their doors or shrinking their shelves, unable to weather the storms of rising rents, supply chain disruptions caused by natural disasters, and soaring transportation costs. What was once a place where fresh food was a daily guarantee is fast becoming a landscape where food feels like a luxury even the middle class struggles to afford. In 2024 alone, food prices in Florida soared by an average of 10.4%, outpacing the national rise and squeezing wallets tight. Who suffers the most? The elderly. Those who planned their retirement carefully, saved modestly, and expected their later years to be filled with calm and comfort. Nearly 27% of seniors in Florida have had to cut back on food spending over the past year. The very people who should be savoring meals that nourish their health find themselves skipping breakfast, rationing lunch, and facing the cruel reality of empty cupboards. Not long ago, Florida sits farmers' markets overflowed with oranges glowing like little suns, pineapples ripe with sweetness, and avocados bursting with promise, fruits that symbolize the state-sipped spirit of abundance and vitality. The picture is different. Walking into many supermarkets is a lesson in frustration, barren shelves, price tags climbing week after week, and the fading smiles of shoppers shadowed by worry. If you have ever opened your fridge, stared into your wallet, and weighed every item you need to buy, not out of choice, but out of necessity, you will understand the quiet anguish gripping so many Floridians. It sets not just the fury of hurricanes or the unpredictability of droughts that threatens this state. It sets also the slow-moving systems, the promises made far from the kitchen tables of real people that fail to catch up with the urgency on the ground. We dreamed of retirement as a season of joy and rest, but with empty shelves and bills climbing ever higher, that dream is slipping out of reach for many. Can we still believe that hard work is a sure path to security? Or is Florida now a cautionary tale, a vivid reminder that even paradise can wither if the roots of community and care are left untended? Oregon, a land of verdant forests, winding rivers, majestic mountains, and sprawling fields that stretch as far as the eye can see. A place where the rhythm of nature once set the pace of life and communities thrived amidst the bounty of the earth. But beneath this calm and scenic beauty, a quiet crisis is taking root, a crisis that is steadily eroding the lives of tens of thousands of families. Empty supermarket shelves, soaring food prices, and fractured supply chains have become the new reality for many. In 2024, a report from the Oregon Department of Transportation revealed a troubling statistic: activity at the Port of Portland, the gateway for over 90% of Oregon's imported food and goods, plummeted by nearly 28%. The culprits: escalating shipping costs and persistent labor shortages, which together have choked the flow of essentials into the state. The consequences ripple far beyond the docks. In cities like Eugene, Bend, and even Portland itself, families have faced weeks where staples such as milk, rice, flour, and eggs simply disappear from shelves. That's not just an inconvenience, That's a deep disruption to daily life. Food prices in Oregon now run approximately 13% higher than the national average, according to Consumer Affairs data. That number is more than a statistic. It's the widening gap between what people need and what they can afford. Yet, the sting of empty shelves isn't only in the lack of food. It's in the silent feeling of abandonment, of being a place overlooked by sweeping policies filled with grand promises but few practical results. Imagine standing in front of a supermarket shelf, once bursting with goods, now bare. The emptiness stares back at you, and with it comes a quiet, annoying question. If there's nothing to buy today, will there be anything left to feed my family tomorrow? Oregon, once a land where nature sips generosity seemed endless, now faces an uncomfortable truth. When the flow of goods stalls and policies falter, when the eyes of decision-makers turn away from small towns and struggling families, who will answer for the unfinished meals and the growing hunger in so many homes? This is more than a logistical failure. It's a call to remember that behind every empty shelf is a story, a struggle, and a community waiting for its chance to thrive again. Michigan, once the proud emblem of the American dream, where blue-collar hands shaped the backbone of a nation, and factory whistles mark the rhythm of daily life. Detroit, Flint, Grand Rapids, cities synonymous with industry, resilience, and the simple joys of family meals gathered around overflowing tables. That dream feels like it's slipping through fingers weathered by decades of hard work. By 2024, more than 40% of Detroit CIP's residents live in what the experts call food deserts, areas where the nearest fully stocked supermarket is more than 2 miles away, a distance impossible for many without reliable transportation. At the same time, food prices across Michigan have climbed steadily, up by 11% on average in the last year, with essentials like beef, milk, and fresh vegetables soaring as much as 18% in the struggling suburban neighborhoods. Those who once fueled America's industrial engine, who proudly built the cars that carried the country's spirit around the world, now find themselves caught in an unrelenting struggle just to put food on the table. Long lines form quietly at food distribution centers. The elderly wait patiently in rain and cold, clutching their hopes in an empty grocery bag, desperate for vegetables, milk, something once so ordinary that no one gave it a second thought. A former auto worker, with 40 years behind the Detroit assembly line, put it plainly. In the past, we made machines that moved the world. Now we stand in line just to ask for a bag of vegetables, a bottle of milk. It's a stark image that cuts deep, and it begs the question, do the people who craft policy ever truly hear these voices? Do they understand that behind every statistic is a person, a family, a lifetime of sweat and sacrifice? Michigan, once the beating heart of America's industry, now stands as a sobering reminder. If the voices of the communities that built this nation go unheard, the glory of a country becomes nothing more than a fading echo, an unfinished story of dreams deferred and promises broken. Illinois, once a proud beacon of America's industrial rise, a state where the clang of factories and the hum of commerce breathed life into every corner, from the towering skyline of Chicago to the quiet towns tracing the winding Mississippi River, community and promise. But today a different Illinois unfolds, a state where supermarket doors are closing, once familiar shelves stand barren, and neighborhoods bear the heavy cost of neglect and silence. In 2024 alone, more than 40 major retailers, names like Walmart, Target, Walgreens, have shuttered their doors across Chicago and its suburbs. According to the Chicago Sun-Times, over 150,000 residents in the South Side and West Side neighborhoods now live in food deserts, where fresh, affordable food is no longer a given, but a daily struggle. Those hit hardest are the elderly, low-income families, and single mothers, Those who once relied on a quick trip down the block for essentials now forced to board buses and navigate miles just to find vegetables, meat, or milk. Even when they reach these distant stores, skyrocketing prices turn their necessities into luxuries. Egg cartons, milk cartons. Every item feels heavier on the budget. A 62-year-old former mechanic from Joliet recalls a time when shopping was a weekend ritual filled with laughter and family togetherness. The past, every weekend, my whole family would go to the supermarket, share a meal, and laugh together. I have to scrape together enough just to buy the bare essentials, and I drive over 30 minutes because there's nowhere nearby open anymore. His words carry a quiet weight. The memories of an Illinois rich with life and warmth, now confined to stories told in dwindling living rooms. Outside, the signs are stark locked doors, empty parking lots, cold for lease posters fluttering in the wind, each one a silent testament to abandonment. Have you ever lived somewhere where picking up a loaf of bread or a bottle of milk became a tiring, costly ordeal? You so understand why, for the people of Illinois, the closure of a single supermarket is more than a lost convenience. It sets a fracture in their faith that everyday life will always hold enough. Hold safety, hold hope. Illinois was once a symbol of a nation that refused to let hunger grow in its cities. Beneath the gleam of Chicago's bright lights, how many families lie awake worried about their next meal? And the question lingers, who will step in to help them find their way back? Arizona, the land of blazing sunsets and quiet desert towns stretching under endless skies, where the warm breeze carries the scent of sagebrush and promise. But beneath those golden horizons, a harsher reality creeps quietly across the sun-baked streets. Empty shelves in stores, scarce drinking water, and fresh food slipping further beyond reach, turning from necessity into luxury for thousands of families. A recent survey by the Arizona Food Bank Network reveals a troubling trend. In just 3 years. The number of households relying on food assistance has surged by nearly 30%. Grocery giants Fry-Sips Food, Safeway, Walmart have shuttered unprofitable branches in Phoenix's sprawling suburbs, Tucson's dusty edges, and the isolated communities of Yuma. For families struggling to get by, the closure of a nearby supermarket isn't just inconvenient, it's a crisis. Many must brave hours-long drives under the merciless 110 degrees heat just to find the bare essentials. Meanwhile, prices climb relentlessly, week after week, pushing the limits of already stretched budgets. Retirees who once sought refuge in Arizona Sip's sun-soaked calm now face a harsh reckoning. Rising living costs and shrinking access to clean water and fresh food threaten the very peace they dreamed of. When even the simplest meal becomes a daily battle, it's hard to believe anyone still thinks this country is watching out for the hard-working laborers, the small families who have long formed the backbone of the nation. And as hunger becomes a quiet, familiar companion and shelves grow emptier with each passing day, the question looms, how many still dare to dream of a prosperous tomorrow? Arizona Sip's sunsets remain breathtaking, but for too many, the coming night feels colder than ever. What we've seen today is more than just empty shelves or missing products. It's a reflection of deeper struggles, economic uncertainty, fragile communities, and lives upended. For many, this isn't a temporary inconvenience. It sets a harsh new reality. As these states grapple with challenges that ripple far beyond the grocery aisles, we reminded how interconnected we all are. The question now is not just when the shelves will be full again, but how we rebuild the trust, security, and dignity that have been quietly eroded. Thank you for joining this journey. If you find this content meaningful, please like, share, and subscribe.